And over the course of some weeks or months, I eventually learned that I could now run for a full 2 hours. And I was like, this is like, does anybody know about this? That if you work out, you can be in a different shape than you were before later.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Not jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. With Rudy Tibersi.
Hello, and what is up, my friends, countrymen, and complete strangers? I thank you for coming out to this podcast today. This is Jokes and the Gym with Rudy Tibersi, and this is the second of a two-part edition of my interview with Myq Kaplan, my conversation with the delightful, hilarious, renowned Myq Kaplan. That's Myq Kaplan. If you are listening to this, though, you probably know how to spell that. Myq's hilarious. He's been on all the shows. He's got multiple specials streaming, available for purchase. He's got new ones in the works. He's hilarious. And in this conversation, we continue talking about a lot of the themes that we talked about in our first episode, including navigating seemingly endless choices and how to successfully make that transition from loving what you do to monetizing what you do, art and monetization. And he even shares a song with us about that very topic, art monetization. Those, I think, are the actually only two words in the whole song. So if you listen, you'll hear it magically dispersed somewhere in the episode, and then I'll put it on at the end. I asked Myq if I could share his song, and he said for sure. And so stick around at the end of the episode to check that out. There's also a bunch of really great just input he has in general. Myq is so generous with his time, his attention, and how he considers and responds to questions. It was a lot of fun to be able to chat with him and get to know him a little bit over these past couple weeks when I've asked him a few questions here and there about the pod and stuff like that, in addition to our nearly 2-hour conversation that we had. So I really hope that you do enjoy the second part of our conversation, and make sure, again, to stick around after the show to hear the Myq Kaplan banger, art and monetization. In the meantime, though, this show is brought to you by the very fake sponsor, Strawberries Now, a brand new book coming at you from schmaudible.com. Do you want to know how to live your life now in the strawberry? Strawberries Now has the answers that you may or may not be looking for. Have you ever been to the past or the future? Well, guess what? Probably not, because neither of them exist. Strawberries Now is going to shed a light on the false information of the past, present, and future, and why the only thing is Strawberries Now. So find this book at your local schmaudible.com dealers, and you'll be happy you did. Or will you? Strawberries Now from schmaudible.com. And with that, thank you for stopping by, and enjoy the rest of my conversation with Myq Kaplan. And do you kind of make those choices those intake choices based on how you're feeling, based on what you want to take in? Like what kind of message or vibes or content or a simpler way to ask the question is, how do you choose amongst these seemingly endless possibilities what to take in?
That's a great question. The answer is simple. I don't know. I mean, in part, some things I watch on my own, and like sometimes I have like a show that I watch, quote unquote, mindlessly, like perhaps while I'm doing the dishes, or perhaps if I've eaten a weed edible, or perhaps, you know, like something that I don't feel like, if I miss it, if I fall asleep, if I forget, like cool. Like the show that's filling that role for me right now is Madam Secretary. And I'm enjoying it, and also everything else I said. And another
And I
show,
don't care.
yeah, the show that I used to feel that way about, and I've gotten through it as much as it exists, I think, is The Flash.
Okay, yeah.
And yeah, but then there's other shows that I'm like, oh, this one I want to sit down and take in and pay attention and like receive it and let it, wash over me and into me the way the artist intended. And one way that I make decisions on what to watch is with my girlfriend, who has, her own tastes and opinions and, often like desires and feelings that like she'll strongly and kindly express. I had these two folks on my podcast years ago but I haven't like implemented this, but this is a way to I think decide what to watch. If let's say you're two people. It was Dave King and Little Esther Pavitsky. I don't know if she's still going by Little Esther, but at the time she was. And I think she's the same size now, probably.
I think it's just Esther.
Yeah, probably just Esther. Yeah. And they shared with me, I think they were in a relationship at the time. I don't know if they still are. I wish them well, both in whatever path they're on. They said they had two means of deciding, if they both had different desires for, be it, a restaurant to eat at or a movie to watch. One way was for, let's say for a movie, if they're like, okay, one person picks like three broad categories that they both have enjoyed before, like somebody like a heist movie, a rom-com, an anime. And then the second person picks, I think, three specific movies from those
genres.
And then the first person picks the one, like, so the second person gets to pick the options. They're like, I'd be happy with any of these three. And the first person gave the categories, so they should be happy with at least hopefully one of them, and then they pick the final one. And I guess I do feel like there is a version of that gets implemented kind of like hazily, casually in our relationship, where I will sometimes look at my Netflix queue or look at my email draft of things that I want to watch, and I will not read Rini, my girlfriend, every 1,000 things. I will read her like 5 things. Yeah. And then she will often be like, oh, this one sounds good. And then we'll do that. And the other thing that Esther and Dave King shared that they do sometimes is I think they call it percentages or 100. And they basically you determine out of 100, how much do you really feel strongly that this is the thing that you want to do? And thinking about the other person's feeling, if you know that the other person wouldn't like the thing that you want, then you'll incorporate that into your thing. But you could, if they say 100, like, I think it had to be, if it was 100, if it equaled 100, like if one person was like, I'm at a 1, I don't want to do it almost at all, but the other person was like, I want to do it 99, then like, then we do it. Or if you're both 50-50 on it, then you do it. It's like, why not? So those are ways to decide. How do we actually, I think the way is that I have these lists and I review them every once in a while, and then sometimes something new comes out and you're like, oh, a new Reggie Watts special is out, I'm gonna watch that. Or
delightful,
I got a new Batman and Robin comic by Joshua Williamson, an author I like. I got that from the library. It jumps to the top of the queue. Right. So
those ones you want in there.
Yeah. And so that's a really valuable experience to have as well, because there are some things that, like, if I look at my library bookshelf and I'm like, which ones? This one, that one. But when something comes in that's like a definite yes, I'm like, oh, I strive to fill my life with, artistic experiences that are the most possible definite yeses.
Now, I've certainly read somewhere that more options does not make us happier. Like having more choices, when we can choose between 40 jellies or 3, the person who has 3 options is way happier, right?
Yeah, but I think four-ish is that's the sweet spot. Yeah.
But it sounds like you just bring the library to your house. Like you just have a little section of the library in your house. Do you have a Nook?
I mean, we just have beyond on the other side of this laptop, we have massive. Like I said, we live in a lofted studio, which means that the loft part of it, you cannot stand up in, but you can sit comfortably.
I had one of those. It's kind of
very
nice.
spacious. It's like a little tree house. We really like it. And what that means also is that the first floor where I sit now has like 12-foot ceilings, and we have a few IKEA bookshelves that go all the way up. And so just the bottom shelf of mine are library books right now. Close to probably between 30 and 40, if I had to estimate, mostly graphic novels. And I guess, yes, I think you are apt to point out that I've brought like, a miniaturized version of my desired section of the library to my home, and I can, pick and choose as I wish.
Yeah.
And I get the joy of picking things out when I'm there. I'm like, ooh, this could be good. I feel like that is nice. It's a different experience than like in a few weeks, I'm performing in Boston, where I started out doing comedy, and I'm returning to the club I began at, the Comedy Studio, which is reopening this month.
Very cool.
Which I'm
That's
excited
about.
exciting.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. And additionally exciting is in the same part of town where the club is one of my favorite used bookstores, the Harvard Bookstore. And they have at one of my moves years ago, when I went through my books, I brought thousands of dollars worth of books, cover price to there that I didn't necessarily pay fully, but they give you, 20% of the cover price in store credit.
Yeah.
And so I have had, just hundreds of dollars in store credit awaiting me, and I continue to replenish it. Whenever I go up there, I bring more books to sell, and then it's like, it's kind of like a library type situation as well. And so they have used books and they have new books. And so there are some books that are waiting for us there that we have ordered that are like specifically, like one of my favorite comic stories is called Fables. It takes place in, a world where fairy tale, like myths, fables, and stories are all real, but those characters exist in a different dimension, but can exist in our dimension in like a cloaked way, a la Hogwarts or what have you. And so there, I think that story concluded its initial run years ago, and I was like, this is one of my favorite stories. And then the author continued the story like 10 years later, maybe. And just recently a new volume came out this year. And so I'm like, that is one that I am an absolute concrete yes. I'm like, I'm going to read that. It's worth, it's a hardcover. It just came out. It's on the more expensive side of things, but I have this store credit. And so that is like a very different feel than like, the library, what does it have? Oh, it's got one of these. Maybe I'll try one of these. And so, I mean, I feel like this conversation is really helping me, crystallize, like, I'm going to be more like, they say sometimes they kill your darlings, when it comes to what you're creating. Like if there's a joke that's not where you like it, but it's not, I mean, like I feel like similarly, I don't know if we can get into this aspect of it as well, but I also have an archive of almost every joke idea that I've ever thought of, on my computer in a file called All Jokes. And I have a few notebooks that are waiting to be transcribed into there. Actually, a couple years worth of notebooks that are just eagerly, patiently awaiting it. But I've embarked upon a project in the past couple of years to go through that All Jokes file, which I think is, between 500,000 and 1 million words.
Okay. So it's just like a Word doc.
It's a Word doc. And my plan is to go through it from the beginning and find like, hey, are there ideas that are worth, revisiting and, brushing off and sharing anew and, curating into a new, different now experience. And so I have a file that I've just begun that's called like All Jokes Filtered. And the thing is, the amount of I need infinite time to embark upon all of the projects of both consuming and creating, of
Well,
producing.
good thing you're not dying.
Yeah, that it's very helpful.
Yeah.
And even if I do, I think then I won't have to worry about it either. So either way, either I have infinite time and I don't have to worry about it, or I don't and I don't have to worry about it.
Oh,
so
great outcomes.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good. So yeah, I think the way, truly, to answer your question of how do I, when I am successful in avoiding clinging, it is about, appreciating what is happening right now, which is both, a meaningful conversation with a fellow human being, traveler seeking, peace and kindness and enjoyment and art and creativity in life, while also creating a podcast which can monetize our futures.
There you go.
What
Boom,
what more can you want besides everything? I was just
all
saying,
the stuff. That's the rest that I want. Is I think everything is what I want, but I don't. Unlike you, I heard I was going to die. So that's like, I don't have as much time. Does it feel at all intimidating to have that 1,000,000-word document lying in front of you? Is that an intimidating thought, or is that like, I'm excited to get down to this, or do you have to like steel yourself to start that process?
That's a great question. And I think that one is such a distant, I guess I have these different ideas of, I have many ways that I want to start this, but one piece of good news is that I don't have to do it. So that's a useful framing is have to versus get to. Yep. And so I'm probably like, this week I was supposed to have some shows in Ohio. They sadly got canceled, but the good news is that now, instead of driving for, many hours to get there, be there, get home, I have a few days that I didn't really schedule anything. And I don't know if I'm going to embark upon the 1,000,000-word document, but I am going to maybe crack into one of the notebooks. I think I have like maybe 6 or 7 notebooks that if I spend one day, like one full work day, it could be like, but sometimes I'll do it, an hour a day for a week, or sometimes I'll do a few hours a day for a few days. And it is intimidating before I start, like the idea of it, because I guess sometimes I have the idea that I want to do it all at once. I'm like, I have this project, I want to finish it, but if the idea of it's kind of like the perfect is the enemy of the good, like the desire to finish it becomes the obstacle to starting. Whereas in Atomic Habits by James Clear, the aforementioned, like essentially one of the pieces of advice that he offers is just take the smallest step. Like if you want to be somebody who exercises every day, literally do one push-up or one jumping jack, and then do it tomorrow and do it the next day. And he's like, it's harder to, he's like, you can't improve the habit until you establish it. So maybe after we get off the phone, I will open one notebook and start a Word document and just write, here's one of them,
I'm kind of my own sous chef in that way sometimes, because it's like, oh my gosh, all the work I have to do to get the podcast out. It's like, okay, let's make the files. Let's name the stuff. Let's put it in the places it needs to be. Let's get the jokes in the place where my eyes can physically see them and my hands can actually touch them. So it's so much easier to get to that place to actually dive into the work, because it's not being present in that work that is challenging for me personally. It is getting into the work.
Yeah, I feel similarly. And so recently, like, in order for me to get a podcast out, like I usually record them far in advance. Like I just released one a week or two ago that I recorded last like Thanksgiving.
Nice.
It's usually not that long, but I had a couple. I had one from Christmas. I had one from and we're talking in September of the following year. I didn't record them in the future, but that I
Last
know
Christmas.
of. Yeah. And so now, so let's say one that I'm going to release a podcast later this week that I recorded a few months ago. And so I recorded it. And so the next step in the process is going through and just adding in, like recording an intro, recording an outro, and then, readying it in its final form to be uploaded. And then there's the uploading of it to the various sites. I upload a bonus to the Patreon or to, Apple subscriptions. And then, so that's another step of the process. And then there's promoting it, like posting about it and letting folks know. And in recent weeks and months, and I actually don't know how far back this goes, but certainly in recent months, I used to want to do all of that at once, be like, let me just get it all done. But now I'm like, look, if I want to release this particular podcast by Friday, I'm like, why don't I listen back to it and record the intro, on Tuesday? And then I can upload it on Wednesday and then promote about it on Thursday, or, whatever it is, get it done a little bit in advance.
Yeah.
And like breaking it down bit by bit, like none of the steps are hard. None of the steps are scary. And similarly to the 1,000,000 words or the 7 notebooks or my digital recorder full of ideas that I want to put into notebooks to make more room in the recorder to get more ideas into there to keep the process shuffling along, which is the whole thing. Is it's just continued. I could stop the process by never writing down another idea, never recording another idea, but I don't want to do that. I'm like thrilled and grateful that I get to do the job that I do, to have the career that I have, to create the art that I create, to write jokes and share them and get and it's really interesting because I don't need to do it the way that I do it. Also, like I could just like do comedy and not write everything down, and maybe some ideas would get lost. And maybe at some point, like, it's so interesting to think about, like, because nobody outside of myself is requiring me to do anything other than like the people who've signed up for the Patreon. I've promised 4 podcasts a month. And so, but I also could be like, peace, everybody. I've decided not to do that anymore. Like, I'm happy for them to receive, happy for me to receive. May my words bring joy to others. And
there's that old Bargatze joke that's like, I've thought about quitting comedy, but there's no president of comedy. I don't just call up Cosby and be like, I'm done,
Yeah, a joke from a different era.
A very different era.
It's really funny. We listened, Rini and I listened to Nate on, I think, the Smartless, the podcast. And Nate brought up Cosby in like a few different times, just as, like historically what he represented in various things. And at one point, Will Arnett was like, Nate, I think I'd love it if maybe think about getting the number of Cosby references down to like a single digit, I think. But clearly
too much Cosby love. I mean, I wore out Himself. Himself was my first video I ever watched as like a fan of comedy as a kid. It was so good. But that's the end of my Cosby references.
That's one. That you get one.
I did 2. I did Nate's and then mine.
Yeah, that's right. He got one. You got one.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. I love Maria Bamford's joke. We should talk about her all the time. Yeah. Maria Bamford, one of my favorites. And so her joke where somebody said, like, she's like, somebody asked me, what are you working on? And she's like, I'm done, finished early. And that's so beautiful. Like, I just did film a special that we're now, getting ready to do post-production on and get it ready to be in the world. And that's to have, and Rini and I created it together. It is about our relationship. And we have been together for over 8 years and have been working on this specific show for over 5 years. And so this is like a long time, a lot of, energy and effort and thought and care. And it's like in, the home stretch of getting, and now it's really nice to be, I'm excited for it to exist. And I'm excited for like the past 2 nights, I went out and did 2 different hours of comedy. One that will be like the next special, and one that will be just workshopped ideas for the future.
Yeah.
And it's so exciting and freeing. And here's like another analogy. I play music, and I've been playing the guitar for 3 decades, and I love writing songs, and that was my initial like career aspiration, to be a singer-songwriter. And now I'm thrilled that it is merely for joy. It is only like, and so sometimes I'll record a song for myself and share it with Rini or share it with my friends. And I have like released songs publicly, on the internet, and they're not, I'm not aiming to become a professional, career musician.
Yeah. Or a music comic.
I mean, I started out that way, and I have released music comedy. But yeah, I mean, I don't know the future. It's not the plan. It could happen. But here's an experience I had. Like, I remember over the lockdown phase of the pandemic, I recorded more songs than usual. I was just like, these are really fun songs. And like, I recorded them at a level of quality that I could do myself, with a microphone at home, with my instruments, with my know-how of GarageBand, which is pretty,
what can you reach right now? What can you do right now?
And I was like, wow, this sounds really good. And I would share it with friends. And I was like, man, maybe I should release this like publicly. And then when I had that thought, I was like, oh, I don't know if it's the level of quality of production that is enough for that. And that is an interesting thought, because just moments earlier, I was like, this sounds great.
Yeah. It's a very different lens that you're looking at it through when you're just looking at it that, oh, I made this fun thing, versus now this fun thing is going to be assessed by thousands of people or however many.
Yeah, I wrote this joke once. It was like, I posted it to the various, Twitter clones and such. It's like a little kid is playing with blocks, and his parents is like, wow, maybe he'll be an architect. Let's sign him up. He's like, can I just play with blocks?
Yeah.
Like the playing, the goal of comedy for me was like, wow, this is super fun. I wonder if I can convert this play into, I don't have to work at anything else. And then, surprise, like some of it becomes, if you want that, like work is, if not required, like in order to, if I want to perform comedy at a place, I have to somehow communicate with that place and the people to get to that place and be like, all right, now I'm doing it.
We're getting there. Was there some crunchiness for you when you took it from that place of, I'm doing this for fun because it's joyful, because I love it, into the career aspect? When you monetized your passion, when you monetized your love, that has always been a question that I've thought about. I haven't had to wrangle with it as much, but I do try to keep joy at the forefront of my process and whatever, when I'm creating comedy, when I'm doing comedy. What were some of those challenges when you took those next steps forward from more enjoyable to more professional?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Generous question. I think I've been fortunate that my background has been not. My parents encouraged me to have like a retirement account, like from when I was in college and just worked washing dishes and making sandwiches. Like, if you have any money that you can put away, put some money away, and that'll be helpful to you down the line. And I have lived, within my means for the most part in my adult life. Like, I don't budget like very meticulously, but I'm like, oh, how much went out this month? How much came in this month? Good. And I've been fortunate to like amass at least like a cushion of savings, and such that if I didn't get booked for some amount of time, it would still be okay. And that's kind of always the way it's been, even from like the reason I decided to leave where I lived in Boston, which was living on campus as a resident assistant to get free housing while I did comedy at night, among other things, and have other jobs. I got a college booking agent, and then I booked some NACA showcases and got some college gigs and had enough of an influx of work that was the first time that I thought, I think, I'm optimistic that if this can keep happening, then I can live from only comedy. Yeah. And so far, and that was in 2007, 2008. Oh, wow. And so far, so good. And also, I know, like, just because it has, I mean, it'd be wonderful to be able to like save game and be like, okay, never will it drop below this. And like,
right.
I mean, I'm getting better and better, and I'm glad. And the world of comedy is shifting, and there are, new skills like to learn or engage with via, obviously social media, reels, other things as such. And, and or figuring out new ways to be creative and, like the part of doing the comedy is now like the joyful, playful, like I got it. Check.
Yeah.
It's, still learning and growing. Here. Yeah, 100%. And now happy to figure out how to get other people to be here and that's the step. That is where the crunchiness lies. Like the always like being present, but then being like, okay, I have gigs, this month and a few next month and a few, you go far enough out and be like, well, at some point, hopefully I don't know where I'm going to be working in 1 year, but hopefully in 6 months, I'll have more of an idea of where I'll be in literally 1 year from now. And so I feel like that's another lesson in less clinging, but I'm in part because I have, thanks to my familial like encouragement, like I didn't leave a day job until I had enough of a cushion that I was like, if this doesn't work out, well, then I guess I just I'll be okay for a little bit, and then I'll get another day job.
Totally.
And that's kind of where it almost always is. I'm like, I could be a doctor. I could be a barista,
Yeah. Those are two good options.
Yeah, I've been a barista, and I was told by my family I could be a doctor. So those are, absolutely.
Just
I
a step
believe
away.
them. Yeah. I think about in terms of this question as well, my friend Sarah Benincasa is a fantastic creator, including having written a book called Real Artists Have Day Jobs. And
I love that. She has curly red hair. Is that correct?
That could be. Yeah.
That could be. Okay. I might have followed her on one of the socials or whatever.
Oh yeah. She certainly has had red hair at times, and I wouldn't put it past her to have it now.
Wouldn't put it past her.
No. Yeah. No, you can't. You got to get up pretty early in the morning to have a different hair color than me. If you want to diet today and I look at you before you did it. Anyway, the point is that I think that was a valuable, like just the title of that book and essay in that book and the content of it is valuable to remember. Like when I started doing comedy, I was doing other jobs and I was doing comedy for the joy of it. And I'm still doing comedy for the joy of it. And I have the knowledge that like there is almost no chance that, like if things go, if things go the worst possible, then yes, everyone I know like loses everything that they have and ends up in hell forever. But I don't think that that's what's going to happen. I think there's a lot of intermediary steps, and I don't believe in an eternal hell, only temporary ones that we can hopefully by clinging less, avoid.
Get out of ourselves.
In fact, one more cling thing.
Yes. I love it.
There's this, I'm like looking around, is it near me? There is a book I had as a child that I reacquired as an adult. It's a book of Aesop's Fables. Or perhaps a book of Aesop's Fables.
Aesop's.
Aesop. Yeah, I think Aesop's Fables. Yeah. Fables. Aesop's Fables.
Fables.
And there was one story in it about a boy who reached his hand into the filbert jar of delicious nuts. I am to understand that was like the equivalent of the cookie jar, back in ancient Greece.
Ooh,
And he stuck
filberts.
his hand in, and he grabbed a handful of them and then couldn't get his hand out because his hand was too bulbous with the filberts. And so in order to get any out, he would have to let some go, but he didn't want to let some go. And that is the kind of clinging both to, like library books or ideas about how many movies I can watch, or like jokes that I can go through in my notebook and transfer, or shows that I can have, or people that I can talk to, or any amount of like things in life that eventually, just one. I'll say this. I'm going to combine that with this Thoreau quote I read recently. When he was asked, what do you think happens after we die? He just said, one world at a time. And I like to transfer that to be like one filbert at a time as well. Like we can only be having in any given moment, what is the thing? What is the filbert? What is the joy? What is the gratitude? What is, especially, obviously there are difficulties, there are challenges, there are like, horrors in the world. There is great suffering. And if you are experiencing that in a moment, like right now, if you're doing a podcast, I'm doing a podcast. If you're out there listening to a podcast, if you're, on the run from, a wild beast that is attempting to eat you, like that is not the time to necessarily be like, but let me count my blessings.
Focus on joy.
It could be, though there is this old Buddhist story of a man who was running from a tiger, or a bunch of tigers. Do you know this? And he came to a cliff and he was trapped. And so he just climbed down the cliff, and there was like a little branch there, and he hung there as the tigers were above him. And there was either a precipitous drop or tigers below as well.
A bunch
and he's
of tigers.
Like, he's just there in between the tigers above, tigers below. And then there's a strawberry patch, like kind of growing out of the cliff right where he is, and he eats a strawberry, and he's like, well, that is the most delicious strawberry that I have ever had. And that's where we all are almost all the time, is, hopefully aiming to be grateful, to be able to enjoy whatever strawberry might exist in between the tigers of the past and the tigers of the future that do not actually exist. It's only strawberries now, unless you're literally being chased by a tiger right now or being eaten by a tiger right now. My apologies to the tiger being eaten by community.
The tiger audience, yeah, you're out there. We see you, and enjoy that strawberry because it's going to end quick.
Enjoy that strawberry. And if a tiger is eating you, I'm sorry, that is not great.
I'd be grumpy.
First, it seems that way. Though, there's a story of the Buddha in a previous incarnation finding a starving mother tiger and her babies who would die if the mother tiger was not able to eat anything, but she had no strength. And so the Buddha in that incarnation sacrificed himself and fed himself to the mother tiger so she could live and the babies could live. And that is like next level. You don't have, everyone, if you're listening, you don't have to do that one until you'll know it. You'll know. Yeah. You can let go of that one.
Yeah. Have you read Dropping Ashes on the Buddha?
I have not read Dropping Ashes on the Buddha.
That was a bedside book I had for a long time. It might be a Thich Nhat book. It might Thich Nhat be, though. But I do recommend it.
I like what you did. That's fun. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go on the library app, and I'm gonna order that book, and I'm gonna get that book. I'm gonna put it on my shelf, and then who knows what's gonna happen.
It might be read. It might not be read. You might get eaten by tigers. So good luck in all those possible journeys that don't exist, because the future is a lie.
Yes.
What is the show I'm watching right now that there is this being who sees the present and the past as the same and can't do anything about it? Why this keeps coming up, but I can't tell. I do not remember what it is. It's I'll get back to you. We've been talking for a long time. Myq, I thank you so much for your generosity with your time and your energy and your attention. And I have a couple questions that I'd love to finish with before we finish
of course.
Today.
Yes.
This is called Jokes in the Gym, and I do love hearing about people's physical exercise plans. I'm a personal trainer myself. I work at the YMCA. I love working out. I love exercise, and I love hearing what other people do, especially comedians, when it comes to their personal and physical health. And I know we've talked about a lot of the aspects of the holistic self, the health that we walk through on a day-to-day basis without even knowing about it. But what are your intentional steps that you take personally to improve your physical health, and how is your connection with your body maintained and strengthened?
A generous question.
You
Pass.
mean
Okay. No.
a wordy question? You can pass. Passing is fine.
The steps I take are literal steps. I would say that
Mm.
walking is my main engagement with exercise. I live near the High Line, a walking path in New York City, and I walk it frequently when weather and conditions allow. Today I walked to a bookstore, didn't buy a book, walked home. I walked from my home to the Strand, which is like, I'll try to walk like maybe 40 minutes, an hour, sometimes longer. I belong to the Park Slope Food Co-op, and the shifts that I do are often walking shifts where I walk people to their cars or homes or public transportation, and I push a cart back. And so sometimes I'll do 2 shifts in a row where I'll just be walking for the most part for like 5 hours. And I walk. This is a ring that is called an Oura ring. Do you know about these?
I've heard about them. Tell me more.
It is mainly like a sleep hygiene ring that detects how much and what kind of sleep you're getting. And then it also, measures your temperature and the various, blood pressures and, things like a Fitbit. And it also, during the day when you're wearing it, will detect workout. So if I'm walking, it'll be like, oh, that was some moderate exercise. If you run, it'll be like that, strong, heavy exercise. Sometimes when I do my performances, it'll be like, hey, were you dancing? That seems like a moderate exercise. Sometimes, like, I could tell you after this that it will probably think, it has told me when I've been sitting down doing podcasts before that it thinks that I am exercising. So Rini has said that she believes, and now we have evidence that has borne it out, that my personality burns calories. But yeah, mainly walking. Like as a child, I did not have a great, I took a dance class because my mom made me and I didn't love it. I didn't feel super connected to my body. I did the presidential fitness test and couldn't run the full 1 mile that was required. I had to stop and walk. But when I got to college, I remember I started going to, on break, my mom had like a gym membership at the local Hilton. And I just went to the Hilton as a guest and I used the treadmill and I would run a little bit and walk until I could run again. And I just went back and forth and like there'd be like a movie on, like HBO would be on, and I would just like kind of do that for 2 hours. And over the course of some weeks or months, I eventually learned that I could now run for a full 2 hours. And I was like, this is like, does anybody know about this? That if you work out, you can be in a different shape than you were before later. And so I think I discovered something. And so, yeah, that was a real turning point. And like, so I used to run, but then I was like, I like running is less pleasant to me and more jarring. And so I walk as much as I can. And that is my main engagement with physical health. I will say, Rini, my beloved partner, she is much more frequently physically in touch with her body. And, like to the point where sometimes when I am on a weed edible, I will describe the sensations in my body as like, ooh, like my legs, I can feel them. They're tingling and doing things. And she's like, that sounds like my life all of the time. And, and she's like, have you considered perhaps being able to feel them when you are not under the influence of this substance? And I'm like, that is, can't even imagine. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Preposterous.
Yeah. But oddly, I mean, I do feel that having an edible substance that then does certain, like shuts down certain or like slows down certain pathways in the brain, like does then highlight. I'm like, oh, and I can like right now, I'm like, I can with some effort like get into a headspace that is connected to a body space. And but yeah, it's I've been long time brain guy, first time body guy. Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. It's the same thing of like when you're moving down, when you're getting below the neck, it takes some time because your head must be going a mile a minute. I see how many jokes you post on Facebook, and I'm like, there's just constant streams of jokes coming out. And for me, I've been chastised by partners in the past, like, you can't make a joke about everything. And I'm like, you're wrong.
I mean, yeah, technically speaking, you can make a joke about everything. And I hear that your partner is saying, I don't want you to tell me all of your jokes about everything all of the time. We're at a funeral, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Not right now, please and thank you. And so yeah, I have found that I am able to get into flow a little more easily in my body than my head, because everything for you, someone who has this performance rhythm, who's able to be doing headlining shows, and you're able to get nice spots where you can explore and take, really deepen your connection with your material. That's almost how I feel in some ways about deepening my connection with my physical self, some ways, because it's like, or learning the guitar, as you're 3 decades in, I'm sure you're still learning every month. You're like, oh my gosh, there's so many more places to play and things to explore. And that's how it feels both on stage or in the gym or whatever. Hopefully for some people, hopefully you get to find those spots. And then the question, I guess, becomes like, what role does monetization play in that process? And does it make it a fuller, better process, or does it take something away from what you are doing? That's not even necessarily a question. It's a ponderance. If you have anything to add, I'm always happy to hear your input.
Sure. No, I appreciate it. And I'll tell you that I actually wrote a song in the past couple of years that starts out beautiful. I think if I remember correctly, the lyrics are just art, 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 art. And then little by little, or maybe all at once, then it comes in monetization, monetization. Yeah. If I can locate it, I'll send it to you. Yeah.
I love it. Sounds like a
beautiful
banger
song. Yeah. You can bang it if you want. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. And one of the questions I tend to finish on is a pretty standard type question, but I think it has a lot of value. And that question is something along the lines of, what kind of advice would you give beginning Myq? I know you're a big fan of time travel. Gosh, your Conan set is one of my favorites. I watched that not too long ago to get ready in part for this interview. Love that. I want to give you so many time travel recommendations and questions. We can do that after the pod. But yeah, so what advice, if Myq did get this time travel contraption and he could speak to young Myq, to young Boston Myq, starting in the comedy club that he will soon be returning to, what kind of input would you give him, or what would you hope that he would decide to cling to?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's one is always when going back in time to try to help yourself. Like there's a lot of risks to this, but if we're saying I'm like, because I'm also like content and grateful with where I am now.
Totally.
I mean, give like bring a sports almanac probably.
Yeah.
That never goes wrong. I mean, I guess I would say like be open to different ideas sooner. Like I would say like one way that I was in the beginning was I loved what I loved. And then what I like, if it was something outside of that, like I loved, your various like one-liner comedians like Mitch Hedberg and, Wendy Liebman and Emo Phillips. And I just like loved those jokes. And then there were like physical comedians who I was like, I don't know. That's not my thing. And now I can watch like, like there's so many beautiful artistic creators in every, like there's clowns are some of my favorite. like the the school of clowning that like brought us like Sacha Baron Cohen and that type of and just physical comedy is now, and I see this in part also because of Rini and her like love of and engagement with physicality and like kinesthetic intelligence as like one of her main modalities of existence, like that dance can be funny and just like a look and a movement and in ways that I've expanded my mind to include the body.
How generous of you.
And so I would encourage myself to basically everything that I've come to in these past, in the past decade. I'm like, well, I'm going to get there, but I guess you could, here's a little cheat code, little bit ahead. Like you're going to get into Buddhism. You're going to get into psychedelics. You're going to get into, these teachers and thinkers and these artists and just basic and listening. That one of the most influential books in my recent years, Rini and I both, she read it and recommended it to me. It's called You're Not Listening by Kate Murphy. And it's hard to recommend to people without it feeling like an affront. But most people could be better listeners. And this book is really, really easily accessible. It's just very simple. And it's something that I come from a talking place. I come from Jews. I come from a specific family. I come from like literally earlier today, I was on the phone with my mom and let me see, here it is. She had to go do something and I told her that I was doing this podcast and she was like, okay, so I guess what she meant to say, what she was saying something like, either you'll call me or I'll call you. But what she did say was, I'll talk to you or you talk to me. And
classic mom text.
And so it's a beautiful thing to have come to a place where I'm still working on it. And I mean, I'm glad that my job is I talk, and I'm glad when I'm invited on a podcast to be interviewed that I am invited to share, in this way. And if we were having a conversation where you're on my podcast, the balance of me talking and you talking would be alternated. And if we were having a conversation at, a cafe, I would strive for it to be less me,
a little more 50-50s.
Yeah. And so I guess that's part of the advice that I give my younger self is that like, because I was given the advice growing up that it's all me, like I'm an only child. I'm an only grandchild. Like I say as a joke, that I was like in my family, the local messiah, like you can do anything, you can be anything. And there's a thing in the Talmud about, like a rabbi says, have one pocket, I have a piece of paper that says this world was created for you. In the other, we are nothing but ash and dust. And like, those are both valuable, meaningful, opposite, but true things that we are, a speck in the grand scheme of the time space continuum. And also from our own perspective, that we are the center of the universal experience, consciousness manifesting it right now as this here now. And so I was given a lot of the side of the scale that was like you, me, and I've had to learn, and thankfully comedy has been helpful and my relationship has been helpful, and these various books and teachings have been helpful. And so I would be happy to nudge my past self a little earlier in that direction, to be open to different ideas, to listen more, and
I love it to include the we a little bit more often. That's such a beautiful sentiment, and I think we can all certainly benefit from that, from opening our eyes and looking around a bit more than we tend to at this point. And even because there's so much that is shared between us. And I've started, I'll just mention this quickly. I started a dance class recently. It's called NIA, Neuromuscular Integrative Action, about a mind-body connection and doing things that feel good. And I really have enjoyed it in only a couple of classes. But something that one of the instructors yesterday was saying was just playing on words. And the idea of my body versus the body. So my body is mine. My body is the one I have. And yes, it's not the same as yours and everyone else's, but the body is us. It's what we all have in our DNA that has been here for however long it's been here for. And just that idea made me feel a lot more connected to others and our physicality together, because we're going through so much of the same stuff.
That's great. There's a quick Buddhist thing that goes along with that. The Buddhist teacher Joseph Goldstein sometimes says, kind of like, I mean, offers maybe as a mantra, I forget like the exact context, but like to say, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not myself. Like in part because the body, whatever we think of ourselves as, is not permanent, is not unchanging. It is not something that if we say we have it, we have a body. Like it doesn't even who has the body. Like the body is, you know, the body exists in this impermanent, changing, constantly way. So I really like that that your class also sort of touches on, the body. Like, hey, whose body is this? It's the body. Yeah,
it's the body. Jesse the Body Ventura.
He really got it. Yeah,
big Buddhist, that guy. Myq, I want to take some time to express some gratitude to you for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Finally.
I know.
Thank you so much.
If people want to see a little more of you and your stuff, I'm sure they're pretty plugged in and have availability, but what would you encourage folks to check out these days?
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for your gratitude. I am really grateful. It was what a delight to talk to you and to share this time. And to now have this opportunity to, may my words bring joy to others. Did I get the phrasing right? Was that it?
More or less. It's certainly the right sentiment.
All right. I mean, I want the exact ones, though. I want them. I want to have them. Okay. People, if you are on the internet, you know how to find a person probably, but at Myq Kaplan, spelled MyQ Kaplan. I recommend my latest album that has come out widely is called AKA, and then all the other albums you can find on the various streaming platforms. I have a special on Amazon called Small, Dork, and Handsome, a special on the Dry Bar comedy platform called Live from the Universe that if you want to subscribe over there, use the promo code Myq Kaplan, spelled my way, and then you'll get a free month of that. The book I mentioned that my friend Ramon Noser.
Him.
Yeah, he illustrated. It is called Heartbrain Art Train. It's at our websites. Follow him as well. He is an incredible follow on Instagram. Beautiful, colorful, philosophical, psychedelic, creative, motivational, just wonderful art.
Podcast art? Is he your podcast art guy?
He is the podcast art guy, 100%. And MyqKaplan.substack.com is my newsletter. I send out, basically jokes and thoughts and things, not too frequently unless you sign up for wanting them more frequently, which I also recommend. But also you'll find out about my shows and things. And then coming soon, don't know when exactly at this point, but I just did film a new special called Before We Get Started that Rini and I co-created and is one of the, if not the proudest hours of comedy that I have been a part of. And so that will be streamable sometime. But yeah, for now, come to a show where I am, follow me where you wish, listen to my albums, listen to my podcasts. I'll be happy to have you on at one point on some future Rudy Tuesday. I know you said you release your podcast on Tuesdays. Do you call them Rudy Tuesdays?
It's a hashtag in effect.
Yeah. That is the one.
Yep.
The body, the mind. I think that covers. If I forgot anything, please, that's fine. I'm trying not to cling to it.
Yeah, we can forget. Come and go.
Thank
Myq,
you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Stick around for a minute, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.
You too.
Art.
monetization, 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 monetization.